Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is a Faith Friday video. I am happy to be back with my Faith Fridays. I haven't been able to I don't know what to say. I guess I've been feeling like sometimes I don't know what to talk about on Faith Friday, or I don't feel like super um, enthusiastic to talk about a topic, but I've been doing reviews on Love is Blind and Married at First Sight, and naturally relationships come up more because I am now married. And so conversations with women have changed. It's really interesting how that happens. That's a conversation for another day. People like to pretend like there's not a division, but there is. Like, women who are married treat women who are not married very differently. But that's not what this video is about. Today, I want to talk about um, the Christian trad wife to divorce single mom pipeline, and just the traditional wife moniker that is floating around on TikTok. And number one, it's dangerous. I think as a Christian, it's dangerous. And I don't think that it is doing anybody any justice. So I'm just going to talk about my own experience. There's a lot of women on TikTok saying that nobody warned them about marriage. Nobody warned them that being a trad wife could possibly end up in divorce and could possibly end up in their spouse leaving them, and no one warned them about marriage in general. And I'm gonna tell you guys what my mom warned me. And we are a very traditional Christian family, and how you can honor God and honor the roles in marriage without being an idiot. I think that's the most important thing. Are you having gas problems, young man? It's horrible. Okay, so let me just make sure I'm live, and then we're going to get started. I'm just going to watch some TikToks and talk to you guys about what's happening with those. But let me make sure I am live. There you go. Okay, so let's watch this TikTok. As someone who, again, grew up in a very traditional Christian household, my mom did not work outside of the home. My dad was kind of like the sole provider. In the most purest sense of the word, people would call my mom a trad wife. The only difference is she wasn't making. Actually, she was. We were making Amish bread scratch. She was a full-on trad wife. We were homeschooled, like the whole thing. Okay, like the entire thing, you guys. Okay, so I want to watch this TikTok because I think this particular one really describes perfectly how women in the church are groomed for marriage, and why I think so many women are coming forth, like the ones who are now in their 40s and 50s are coming out and saying, I was deceived. This was awful for me. I think this particular video will explain why. And then I'm going to talk about why this is an incomplete gospel, why we need to be really careful about how we talk to women about marriage and how we talk to men about marriage, especially in today's day and age. So let's listen. Okay. Okay. So we're going to watch that again. I'm going to comment and pause on some of these things. So it wasn't my experience that this was projected onto me from childbirth. But I would definitely say once you start getting in your 20s, your mid 20s, and even in some circles, 18, like when we were in a very reformed church, people got married at 18. And it was like, as soon as you're an adult, get married, have children. And why I think that's problematic is that a lot of girls at 18 are not even old enough. And especially in this day and age, you guys, they're just simply not mature enough to even know how to select a healthy man. They're not, and their parents don't teach them how to select a healthy man. So a lot of these women who are coming out and saying that they were, now they're getting divorced at 40. They were married really, really young. And let me tell you what my mom told me. She was like, you have no business getting married before you turn 25. Number one, when you're 25, you're, well, if we have the traditional timeline of a woman, if she goes to university or goes to a trade school, she has some life experience out in the world. She's met different kinds of people. She knows, like she's seen some red flags. She kind of knows what she wants. Doesn't mean she's had boyfriends. She could have just like even been in social settings with males and understood male dynamics. But more importantly, your prefrontal cortex is fully formed. So you have reason, you have rationale, you can critically think in a way that you cannot do when you're younger, when you're in 18. And this is why I think a lot of women in these Christian circles, when they get so young, they are formed by their husbands and by the church. And I believe that the church has a role in shaping women and men. But if the role is solely focused on just being a wife and not being watchful and understanding how to select men, that's problematic. And I believe that's why there's so many issues with these women coming out of these fundamental churches. They were never taught what a healthy man is. In fact, it was purposefully left out. If you go to a lot of churches, they will talk so abundantly about women, but they will not talk about men and what men need to do and what are unhealthy and unsafe men. And I was very, very fortunate that my mother she was honest. And she's like, you don't want to pick a man who you have to baby. You don't want to pick a man who has psychological issues. You don't want to pick a man who has emotional issues. You don't want to pick a man who doesn't know how to be independent. Like, you don't want to pick a man who you have to mother. She was just really honest. And a lot of mothers, especially in this circle, this Christian framework, they want their girls to be married so badly that they forget to tell them what a healthy marriage is like, and that you should even be attracted to your husband, right? There is this very stale aspect to marriage where it's just like, you get married, boom. It's gonna work because you're both Christians. And I think we've evolved past that for a lot of reasons, and mostly because our society is changing. There was a point in time where women couldn't work. There was a point in time where women couldn't make as much money as men, and they weren't making exorbitant amount of money and taking care of themselves before marriage. And so now women are like, wait a minute, I'm not coming into my full self. I didn't come into my full self before I was married, and now I feel lost, and my husband is bored of me, essentially. He's tired of me. He found something that's more exciting, younger. And I think that comes from us not understanding what makes a healthy relationship work. And sometimes that involves not marrying someone because they're not healthy enough for marriage. Oh, shit. This I have seen, and I'm not opposed to this. You guys are going to hate me for this. I'm not opposed to finding a husband in college. I think this is actually a good goal. I think it shouldn't be your primary goal. Your primary goal should be to get an education. But I think women should choose. I like this because it tells women to go to college. It tells them to live a life, get a little bit of life under your belt before you just jump into being a wife and then putting on this performative role of a trad wife because you're look for an aesthetic. And even though there was no TikTok back then, you guys, this is still an aesthetic. It is an aesthetic to be a trad wife, and it always has been. So you're cosplaying needs to be a wife because no one has actually taught you how to be in relationship. They've taught you what to do, how to serve, not bad things at all, but they have not taught you how to relate to men in an honest and authentic way. They've not taught you men how to relate to women in an honest and authentic way. But I like the idea that if you should go to college, go get some kind of trade, some kind of skill. This is something my mom told me. Get some kind of skill, some sort of trade, not number one, because you don't never know when your husband's going to come. Number two, when your kids go to school, you need to have something to do too. Like you might want to have something to do during the day, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, and so, but a lot of women, there's this ring before spring, and so there's this pressure to get married, and even if it's not like in their spirit, they're like, "Ooh, this one's not the right one," but they want to have a ring before spring, their senior year. Then they just marry the person, and they know deep down in their soul that they did not love this person, or that they did not want to be with this person. So this is the pressure that is put on women, especially in this like really fundamentalist Christian era, is in this realm, is just get married. It doesn't matter who it is, just get married. As long as he's a Christian, just get married. And I think that's that's the recipe for disaster, because again, if you're not sending a message to men that, hey, y'all can say that. If you want to say just get married, fine, but make sure you train men to be emotionally developed, emotionally intelligent, not to throw their ego and weight around, because that's what a lot of these Christian men do. They throw their ego and their weight around, and they use the Bible to abuse women. It's happening. I have to be honest. I have to be honest about this, because I'm not going to sit up here and be like, no, like for the sake of defending Christianity, being lying to y'all. Like it does happen. And that's because a lot of men are not taught how to be emotionally intelligent, and they're not told, hey, you're not ready for marriage. One thing that happens in some other cultures, like Eastern cultures, is that if a man is not ready for marriage, the community will tell people he's not ready. He hasn't done his work. He hasn't gone to therapy. He hasn't built this, this wealth that he needs to build before. He hasn't accomplished the things he needs to do. He hasn't proven his manhood. He's not stable, and they're okay to say that. But sometimes in Christian circles, we won't tell people that this man is not ready. We will, oh yeah, you can fix him. Absolutely not. We are not Bob the Builder. No, absolutely not. Again, my mom warned me. She's like, don't do it. Do not marry someone you have to fix. This is real. This is real. A lot of women are told that, oh, if you just, oh, that's you. A lot of women are told if you just sleep with him and he won't on you. Lies. Lies. Now, as if you're married and you are in a monogamous relationship, I mean, you do need to, like, this is the only thing that he has. So you do need to, and in Christian circles, there is the idea of mutual submission, right? But to say that this is what's going to keep him from cheating is a lie. If a man is going to cheat, he's going to cheat. And a lot of men, they when these women are saying they cheated on him, these women were like, I'm going to do this every night for you in the hopes of you staying, and these men left anyway. And this is not a call to be rebellious. This is not a call to be, but it's just the idea, the principle that this is going to be the thing that's going to stop a man from cheating on you. No. If a man has a history, like in his DNA, and he has a history of being promiscuous, if he has a history of having a faulty character, and if he has a history of not being able to express his emotions, not being honest or truthful, or wanting to talk to a marriage counselor, those are things that will keep you from that would potentially prevent him from cheating. It's not going to be the sex. I'm sorry, but it's not. It's not. Because when a man wants to cheat, he cheats. And I think a lot of these women are bitter because they are given this rule book. You guys have to read Jill Duggar's book, Counting On, and you have to read Duggar Rollo's book. Oh gosh, it's whatever book. You guys look it up. But because she talks about how these pastors in this cult gave her a list of things to do, and that was going to be how she gained favor with the Lord. And it's like that this is an incomplete gospel. And when you have an incomplete gospel, then you have people doing checklists, and eventually, because their heart is not changed, you end up with this. You end up with women who are being abused and left and divorced with no money, taking care of 3, 4, 5 kids because the church told them to have 10 kids. Another thing my mom warned me about, she was like, you better make sure how many kids, like you are sure about how many kids you want to have. You do not have to have 10 kids. Because that was like our sect, right? Like have a bunch of kids. My mom was like, nope, you don't have to do that. Okay, I'm done with this one. The last slide, she was talking about submission. And she said, if you spoke out against submission, you were considered a feminist, or you talked about feminism. Here's the thing, incomplete gospel, once again. Churches will absolutely talk to women about submission, but then forget the second half of the verse that says that men should submit to their wives. They will absolutely talk about the Proverbs 31 woman, but will not talk about the Titus 2 man. Is it Titus 2, you guys? I think it's Titus 2. The Titus 2 man. They will not talk about the man who, the requirements for elders and pastors. They won't talk about that. The fact that you should be married and be able to take care of your family, and you should not be provoking your children to anger, and you should be compassionate. You should not be a drunk. You should. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there is this overwhelming message to women on how to be wives, but not the same effort and energy given to men. And so a lot of women are left not knowing what to look for, not knowing, and men are like, hey, I get a proverbial slave. They're like, hey, why not? And my mother warned me. She said, yeah, you better get someone who's emotionally intelligent. And you better get someone who wants to understand you and who is attentive to your needs and who's not going to dismiss your emotions as womanly wiles. And you better date someone and marry someone who knows what submission is. It is mutual submission. It is not you just whatever ever beckon and call it, and you're just like, yes, whatever you want. Even if it's not unto the Lord. Yeah. Because that I'm just being honest, you guys. Because I think submission is a beautiful thing. And one of the things that me and my husband talked about in premarital counseling was mutual submission. Mutual submission. Our premarital counselor did not throw that word all at me. He did not. And I was like really impressed, honestly. Because what happens in a lot of circles is it's all on the woman to be submissive, and then men throw that word around without submitting to their wives. And it's a mutual thing. The other thing, okay, you guys, Christians are going to be so mad at me. Oh, wait, Jackie Hill Perry calls it the Super Saints. The Super Saints are going to be so mad at me. We got to stop marrying men who don't have anything to submit to. If you're not honoring God and following God, I'm not submitting to you, which means I'm not marrying you. But because of the incomplete gospel around marriage, women are encouraged to marry men who have nothing to submit to. Is your character godly enough to be submitted to? Because if it's not, goodbye. Have a nice day. You are not the one. That is not it. He's not the one. He's not ready. Goodbye. But instead, because of the get married, like that's the godly thing to do, it is, but with the right person. So we are pressured into marriage. And we got a little bit of that, growing up. I think because we're Black, to be honest, and because we weren't like too deep, we got into when we weren't too deep. So we were able to, I think, well, I was going to say, because we're Black, there's this like Black excellence, the whole thing. So our parents were like, hey, make sure you take care of yourself. They didn't go to college. So they were really focused on that. So we skipped the whole get married at 18 phase. But a lot of our white counterparts got married really young to older men. Really, really young. And I'm a fan of an age gap. You guys know, I think the age between women should be 5 to 7 years if possible, 3 to 5 at the minimum. You guys know I believe in the science behind development and maturity, right? But I think I know that a lot of women are forced, encouraged, strongly prodded to just get married at 18 once they are, because that's the best thing they can do for themselves. What happens is they also like, okay, the women are going to hate me for this too, but I'm going to say it. I believe that what's also happening to these trad wives is they're also rebelling because they never got to discover who they were. They never got to, right? So if you get married at 18 or even 21 and you spend 10, 15, 20, 30 years married and raising children, when those children leave or when they get older and you're like, who am I? I've talked to several older women about this. They're trying to figure out who they are. And they're like, I want to do something. Because it's only natural. It's only natural to have an identity. If we look at the Proverbs 31 woman, she raises her children. She burns the midnight oil, but she also has stuff that she does on her own. That's her business, her hobbies, right? And so when we demonize hobbies that are not in the home, we encourage women to stunt parts of themselves. And my mom warned me. She said, because you guys know I train clients. She goes, always keep one client. Just keep one. Even if I have hundreds, because I work with athletes, hundreds. She said, keep one. So that you don't lose who you are. Because that's when things start to go crazy. You go off the rails and things go off the rails. And I think there's a lot of things that happen with that in that dynamic between men and women. I think we don't have time to talk about it here. This live is already 23 minutes and I'm only on the second video, but that's just something to think about. And a lot of Christian women are going to hate me for saying this because they've been taught too that the most important thing is being a wife and a mother. That is now the most important thing in my life because I'm 35. I got married at 35. I am so thankful I got married at this age. You guys want to know why? I have 3 teaching credentials. I have a master's degree. I built a 6-figure business. I was on my way to make multiple 6 figures next year before I got married. And I was like, I moved. I've traveled the world. I've lived in another country. I've done what I feel like I've lived life. And so I'm comfortable now to really fall into a more traditional wife role. But I can tell you, I wouldn't have done that earlier and I wouldn't have that comfort. I'm not going to have that phase of who am I? I know who I am. And that's why I see why my mom was like, hey, just wait. 25, live some life because you change so much between that time. And then you can find someone who's really compatible with you. That was the best advice she ever given me. Okay, let's talk about Christian's cultural obsession with marriage. Now, I'm so curious what this lady has to say. Okay, let me make sure you guys can hear this because I worry that you cannot. You cannot. You cannot. You cannot. Oh, it doesn't look like you guys can hear it. Let's see. Oh, you guys can't hear these videos. Okay, let me play them on my you guys can't hear this. Oh, you guys can't hear these videos. Oh, that's so bad. Okay, let me play it on my let me play it on my shoot. Let me play it on my phone. Analyzed to really. Sorry, guys. Well, I'm glad that the other one was a TikTok. Like it was just words. So let's see if I can find it. I had these all queued up, you guys, and I'm just so like I'm so upset. Oh no, this girl's name is Jean Karaoke. I'm so sorry, you guys. I like queued these all up on my YouTube. I'm like, and it's not gonna work. So I'm really here we go.
Apparently, a lot of Christians exclude people who are not married. I second everything that was said in that video before. Okay, friends, I was in class today, and this verse just like been running through my mind the whole day. And the verse is in Proverbs.
I'm sorry. Hold on, you guys. Let me get it together. I'm so sorry. I feel so like. Okay, let's see. This is it. Okay, here we go. Found it. Sorry, you guys.
I was talking to my sister about this the other day, and we were talking about the weird obsession in Christian culture with marriage. And I've talked about this on my page before. I don't talk about marriage or relationships really because I don't seem to want to talk about them. I don't ever feel a calling or to my spirit to talk about them. But we're talking about this. And the reason why I said this is because I spend a lot of time around kids. And something that truly bothered me, like it truly, I don't want to say agitated, but just bothered me, was the way 14, 13, 15-year-olds are talking about their future husbands and wanting to be married at this age and this and this and this, and they felt left behind. And the reason why I say they feel left behind is because inherently a lot of Christians exclude who are not married. As an older...
Yes. And why is this so important to talk about? It's because when you exclude people who are not married and talk about them as if they're a different, okay, you guys. I remember at my dad's church, I was going to be honest, I was like 27 and there was all these women walking around with 5 kids, 23 years old, and the looks they would give me like, oh, you devilish, satanic warlock whore, because you don't have children and you're not married. Child, you look tired. You look displeased. You look worn out. You look unwell, baby. You don't look happy. You don't look joyful. But the looks, girl, the looks they would give me because I was not married. She's right. Because there is this thing where it's like, oh, we're married. Girl, marriage is not my accomplishment. It's not an accomplishment. It doesn't make you a better Christian because you are married. Because the presumption is if you're not married as a Christian woman, you are rebellious. You're falling into the feminism or the fact that like, because I have standards, like I'm not just gonna marry Tom, Dick, or Harry, like, right? Or you're not married because there's something wrong with you, like it. You're displeasing and dishonoring God. Child, please. And that is why so many women jump right into this because they are shamed when they are not married. They are shamed when they don't look like how we think the Christian, woman should behave. And are there standards for Christian women? 100%. You guys know I am not anybody like liberal Christian, right? But the obsession is real. It is. It is like, and it's wild to me. It is unfathomable to me that a 15 and 6-year-old girl would think that the highest calling in her life is to be married. I believe in a certain timeline for women, and this is what I will teach my daughters. I will teach them that there's periods of education and growing and learning about yourself and developing skills. There's a period of time in which you start to look for a husband. Baby, it's not 14 or 15. Because this kind of desperation leads to falling for men who are not healthy for you, and sometimes older men who are taking advantage of women. But we're not ready to talk about it. Can we talk about it? That's the name of my next podcast.
Like someone in my 20s who's not married in the Christian world, it's insane. Y'all, I'm 21. Mind you, that's not old. That's really, you're still excluded to some extent. And the minute you get married, you're finally included. And a lot of these kids see that. A lot of younger people see that. So they're not in a relationship at 17, 18, 19. They feel left behind. They feel like they're being excluded from something, from some club they need access into, not remembering that marriage is a covenant. So like 2-3 years ago, I was praying and I kept seeing a braid. I don't know why I kept a braid. And I've never I was like so confused. Usually when God shows me something, there's like a biblical symbol of it, but I've never read anything on it. So one day the Lord just told me, pick up your Bible and start reading. And anytime he told me to read at this period in my life, he spoke to me through Ecclesiastes 3. So I'm going to read Ecclesiastes 3 and I'm like, okay, that's nice. He tells me to continue to read. And as I read, the verse pops up and the verse says, a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And I said, oh my gosh, Lord, why didn't I see this 2 months ago when I started seeing the braid? And the Lord was teaching me about covenants with him and the covenant of marriage and all these things. You have to take covenant serious because it's not easily broken. Breaking something that's tied to God is not easy. Because there's so much that comes with it. There's sacrifice.
This is the key. What she said was breaking something that God is not easy, that's tied to God is not easy, which is why when you make that selection to get married and who you marry to, you have to be very careful. Because when we watch these other videos, what a lot of these women talk about is how hard it is to leave because they did make a covenant, but being mistreated, and there's infidelity, there's forms of abuse, and they're like, I can't leave because I want to honor God. And that's why it's so careful. So when we are pushing women to be trad wives, as if that's what makes a marriage work, that is the problem. And this is, I think, the issue with like TikTok and the social mediaization of everything is an aesthetic of a trad wife that has zero to do with a marriage. Like you can do all of those things and not be married. That has nothing to do with being married. What marriage is between you and your husband and how you guys communicate and how you guys deal with life. And the trad wife aesthetic is a glorification of that. It is a hyper representation of that. It is a, come on, English teacher, hyperbole. The trad wife on TikTok is a hyperbole. It is not reality. So women are glorifying the idea of being a trad wife without actually understanding what that entails. And like this young lady said, it is a covenant. It is a very deeply personal relationship that you have to be sure that you want to enter into with this person. And if you are 18, 19, 20, and someone is telling you, you got to get married, and you don't even know what you like yourself, you don't even know what you like about yourself, it's a problem. It's problematic. Okay, let's hop into the next one. Okay. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull up all these. I'm really embarrassed and disappointed in myself. Okay.
comes with it. My college wanted every girl that attended to become a trad wife. So in college, they told us that the only reason women usually go to college is because it's the best place to find a man, and this is your time. So make sure, ladies, that you aren't loud, you don't laugh too loudly, you don't act too loudly, you don't ask the men out, but just sit there pretty and you can get a man. Also, after you start dating, you should get married as soon as possible and then have as many babies as possible so we can out population in America and take back America to its Christian roots by raising up little Christian armies. It would also tell the men that they need to be strong in the home, going to work every day, or specifically, and the best goal is to get in politics. Again, so that way we can turn America back to its Christian roots. And it just felt so icky being groomed to be a trad wife. We'd hear about it in chapel, in Sunday school, in classes with our teachers. It was very much known that women are less or a step down in the community than men. And yeah, do not recommend.
Okay, so I think this goes back to my point about an incomplete gospel and an incomplete vision of what marriage is. And if you, if you think the only reason, like, okay, let's go back to what the gospel says about marriage. Marriage is about demonstrating Christ's love for the church. That's what it's about. Is it important that Christians are in politics? Yes. Are in political positions? Yes. But that's not like, that doesn't teach those men about marriage. That doesn't teach those men how to treat a woman. And this doesn't teach the woman how to treat her husband. It doesn't tell the woman how men and women actually work. But this, I'm assuming she went to a really conservative Christian university. Again, we see the same sentiments, which are, I was told that the best thing I can do right now with my time is get married. Married during college and just as quickly as possible. And when we tell women that, as I said earlier, we teach them that their personal identity does not matter. And one mistake that I think Christians have made is we want to put a blanket over people's personalities, and we want to dim their personalities and conform them all into our image, not the image of God. And I want to talk about this a little bit more as it relates to trad wife, that whole thing. So we have an aesthetic of a trad wife, right? And we're calling it Christian. We're saying make sourdough, wear house dresses, look like your own little house on the prairie, talk in this way. It's very Duggar-esque. But that's not God calls a good wife. God doesn't say that a good wife has to wear little house on the prairie dresses or dresses from Little Woman. God doesn't say that you have to bake sourdough from scratch. God says that you are in charge of your home. He says that you are spiritually, the home is your domain. But that can look like so many different ways. And when we try and put people in a box and force them to look like a certain image, we distort the beauty of Christianity, which is there are so many different women who have so many different talents and gifts. And if they want to hire a housekeeper, maybe hire a housekeeper. If they want to hire someone to cook their food, maybe hire someone to cook their food. But this idea that what it looks like to be a traditional wife is this, it's cosplay. It's all cosplay. And my prayer and hope for women, particularly in the Christian space, is that we do not confuse what TikTok is calling Christian trad wife with Christian wifery. They're not one and the same. You could never bake sourdough bread, never do his laundry, work outside of the home, still godly wife. They are not the same. They are not the same. And I think this is what my mother was trying to warn me about, is that when you try to do something that is not within God's parameters of what you should be doing, then things go awry. You're allowed to be a personality. You're allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to be lively and joyful. Of course, there are times when you need to be meek and humble, of course. But you are also allowed to have a personality, and you're also allowed to have interests and things outside of the home. But women are looking at this and they are repulsed because their innards are saying, I like the idea of being a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom, but something about making me cook sourdough and making me dress like this, and you guys putting your hair in pin curls and wearing these weird aprons, women are saying this is fake. This is fake. And they're right to be called out for that. Because as Christians, we should not be looking at these trad wives and going, that's what I want to be. No, I want to be a godly wife. I want to be a wife who honors God. And I know that I can honor God in jeans, baby. I can honor him in yoga pants. I can honor him in a jumpsuit. I can honor him in a dress. I can respect my husband in jeans. I can respect my husband in yoga pants. I can respect my husband in a dress. I can respect my husband in a bathing suit. Right? So I don't need to fit, and neither do you, into this trad wife box that TikTok has created for monetization, for overconsumption, so you can buy all these things to be a godly wife. And don't let the desire to be a trad wife outdo your desire for a healthy marriage. Because I promise you, God's design for you is not to be in a relationship with a man who doesn't value you. That is not what this is about. And I'm not saying the two are mutually exclusive. What I'm saying is, do not let the idea and the pressure to be a trad wife cause you to rush into a marriage with someone who eventually you will divorce later on because you did not vet them properly. Because your church told you to get married immediately. Because your church didn't even vet him properly. Come on. Don't let that be the case. Do not let that be the case for you. And I'm so thankful. I wish everyone had a mother who warned you, because again, my mother we were in a cult. We were in a cult where, women weren't allowed to work. How dare you work outside of the home? Your kids have to be homeschooled. Listen, I love home. You guys know I will homeschool I love the fact that my mother was at home. I recognize that we're living in a completely different society. I work. It's part-time, but I work. Because it is rough out here on these streets. And it doesn't make you less of a godly woman to not want the trad wife lifestyle. It doesn't make you less of a godly woman. What makes you a godly woman is your heart posture towards the Lord and your heart posture towards your husband. And the reason why a lot of these women are getting divorced is because they didn't have a mother who warned them and said, hey, you don't have to do that right now. You don't have to do that right now. You can do that just a little later. You can do that after you go to college, after you've earned a trade, after you've explored your hobbies and you start to know yourself and you know what kind of people you interact with. And yes, marry a Christian man. Make sure that he's also done his work, that it's just some weird marriage where you guys are pretending and playing roles. And he's going off on the side to some younger woman because we didn't vet them and no one told us how to actually have a marriage. And I think the other last thing I would say about this is what's really sad to me is the messaging around this man will never leave you if you do these things. We can't predict the future. And so to assume that if I do this checklist, then this man will never leave, and will never cheat on me. That's dangerous for women to go into. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for men too, to never be told you're out of order with God if you're not doing these things in your home. If you're not doing this to your wife, you are out of order with God. And I think this is why Christian premarital counseling is so good. If you're a Christian, because if it's a good therapist, it's a good counselor, they're not going to dismiss the role of a woman. The role of a woman is important. The role of a wife is important. As a mother of children, as a mother of, as a wife, that role is really, really important. And you deserve to be with someone who respects that and appreciates that. And if they don't, they're not it. They're not. And if they don't want you to have a personality outside of being a trad wife, they're not it. Is being a mother and a wife a big part of who I am? Yes. But it's not all of who I am. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Like, I look at some of these women. Let's take Allie Beth Stuckey. Trad, traditional Christian woman, has a whole successful podcast. Nothing wrong with having interests and hobbies outside of your marriage. So don't think that just because you're not baking sourdough bread and living on a farm, that you're not a godly wife. And are you idolizing being a traditional wife over having a godly marriage? Because that's the other thing. Hey, child, I don't have any desire to wear house dresses. I have no desire. I'm like, y'all look a mess. I have no desire to dress like that. If that's for you, come on now. Go ahead, sis. That's for you. But I don't want us to demonize the trad wife lifestyle, traditional women, over an aesthetic. Because there are a lot of good men with traditional wives, traditional women, and they have long, happy, healthy marriages. So we have to be careful about taking this manufactured aesthetic, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and applying it to the Christian religion and saying, see, these women they just happen to be Christians, baby. They just happen to be Christians. But there's nowhere in the word that says that's how you have to dress. It's just not in there. So we have to be careful about taking that manufactured image and applying it to Christianity. And then saying, see, if you act like this, these men are going to divorce you, because that's what these women are saying. Like these women are saying, I did I couldn't show you guys the TikTok, so I couldn't share, but a lot of women were saying, when you were a trad wife in your 20s and cooked all the sourdough bread and had unmedicated births, and he leaves you for a younger woman, honey, that's because it wasn't your fault. It wasn't the trad wife thing that was going to keep him anyway. And we have to be honest about that. We have to be honest that that's not the thing that's going to keep a man. And if a man wants to stay, he will. But we cannot demonize the women who want that lifestyle and try and tell them, the man's going to leave you. I hope not. What we should be telling is, hey, before you get into this lifestyle, vet this way. Vet this man. All right, you guys, it was a super long live, 50 minutes. Whoa. I hope you guys enjoyed this live. I hope the audio and video is okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so annoyed with how things turned out. But anyway, if you made it this far, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.